What I'm going to share with you today will make a difference in your writing, whatever level you are currently at, I promise. And it might be something you think you know if you're one of those really advanced writers, and it might be something that you could learn a little more deeply, let's say that. I'm Dada Groover, and I am an award-winning author. I'm also an award-winning speaker, and I used to be a professional screenwriter. And this is something that I won't get into great detail around that, but it's something I grew tired of very quickly. I hate the industry of screenwriting. I do. Some people love it. I hate it. And, I could tell you more about that in another video if you want. If you'd like to see that, put it in the comments below. Tell us about your screenwriting experience. Anyway, I learned a hell of a lot of stuff about writing. And I learned a lot in that scenario, in the screenwriting scenario, that I can directly apply to fiction, nonfiction, to writing books, basically. And what I want to share with you today is something that, a lot of writers know, and a lot of writers think they know, and they could learn a lot more about it. And that is how to engage people, because especially right now, what's going on in the writing world, a lot of people are writing books, and a lot of those books are really, really bad, in my humble opinion. Just like a lot of movies are really bad, right? Because Hollywood has become a very commerce-driven industry, not so much into art. I mean, frankly speaking, are you going to scream next time you hear, "Oh, we got 3 more superhero movies coming out this month"? No, I'm so done with that. But you know what? They keep making them because they keep selling them. Hollywood keeps selling them, and they keep making profit on them, so they're going to keep doing it. But I'm digressing a little bit. As far as books go, right? So the marketplace is, in terms of numbers, it has never been this great, where there's been this many people writing. And what happens on the other side, on the reader side, is that people lose interest much more quickly than they ever did before. They go to your bookstore, you buy a book, you go home with it, you've bought the damn book, you're going to read it, right? Chances are really good you're going to read it. That is no longer the case. Right now they have books that are on Amazon. If you click on the Kindle version, you can read quite a few pages. You can put it on your Kindle and you read it. Or you can, even if it's a print sale, they'll have the look inside thing where you get many, many pages. If you don't catch people's attention, they will not even buy your book in the first place. And even if they buy your book, this was a big surprise to me when Different came out. So Different won 12 awards, 12 literary awards. I believe it's good. I've heard from people who have read it. I've got great reviews, mostly 4- and 5-star reviews on Amazon. But what I found is a lot of people bought it and they didn't actually read it. And that was a big surprise. I would assume, you buy the book, you're going to read it. No, sometimes people buy something and then they just put it off, and they might read it later, and it's going to happen. But the point is, people need to be engaged. So they need to be sold on what you have written constantly. They need a reason to keep turning the pages, where before, like I said, they buy the book, they're going to read the book most likely. Now that is not necessarily the case. So to give them a reason to keep turning the page, they have to be engaged. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And yes, there are different ways to engage people. One way is to ask questions. And when I say ask questions, I mean, it could be an argument between an intimate couple, right? They're having this argument, and it ends with one of them saying, "Well, we'll see if that works out for me," right? So there's like an undertone of like, this relationship might not work out. And then, in the next chapter, you got to find out, is that relationship going to go down the drain? Is something going to happen? They're going to work something else. So that was what I mean by asking a question, not asking a question directly, although sometimes, people do that. And it could be a question like, in a how-to book, right? You could end a chapter with something like, "And what I'm going to show you next will change your life, I promise." Yeah, that'd make me want to turn the page, probably. So this is one way to engage people, right? You ask questions. When I say ask questions, you raise questions, right? Things happen, and what I think is important for any writer to do is to make what I call a character map. Sorry, a question map. Character maps are important, but that's another topic. Make a question map so that you will know what questions were raised and when they are answered, because your questions need to be answered. So, for example, on the first page, there could be 3, 4 different questions that are raised. And what's going to happen to this main character? And did she really mean it when she told her brother to jump off a cliff? And what's going on between them? And whatever the questions are, right? I'm talking from the point of view of a novel. But this also applies to how-to nonfiction, to memoir, to many different things, including emails, right? Just to give one example. So in the question map, you want to have you want to say, like, on your first page, this question, that question, and this question. And then on your later in the question map, you want to say where that is going to be answered. So, for example, the 3 questions that are asked on the first page, raised on the first page, the first one might be answered on page 15. The second one might be answered on page 2. The third one might be answered at the end of the book, right? And it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's your art. It's your palette. It's your palette to choose where these different answers go in response to those questions. And it's very important. The other main purpose of this question map is it's very important to answer them all, mostly. And if it's a how-to nonfiction, you want to generally answer all the questions. If it's memoir, you want to generally answer all the questions. I say generally because there's always exceptions to these rules, right? I love breaking rules as long as I know what I'm breaking and I want to know why I'm breaking it. And with novels, sometimes you leave things hanging, just like in movies. Sometimes you leave things hanging. It might be leaving the door open for a sequel, right? Usually if there's going to be a sequel to the book or to the movie, then there are some big questions hanging. In a book, too, there can be very minor questions left hanging, but you should do that intentionally. That's my humble advice. Do it intentionally. Don't do it accidentally, ever. Ever. Never leave a question hanging unless you intend to do that. And it can frustrate the reader. Like if they want to know the answer to a big question that's raised and you don't tell them, they might get upset with you. And that's generally not a good thing. They might leave an unfavorable review, whatever. Excuse me. It can be unsatisfying for the reader to have these big unanswered questions there. So questions, raising questions, making the question map, knowing where their questions are answered. And it's fun. It's actually, for me, that makes it more fun, having the question map and knowing what I'm doing. Now, typically in writing, questions will be answered. It's a natural thing, right? Like, I raise this, I'm going to answer this here. But if you look at it in terms of that map, you can be a little more strategic and say, oh, you know what? I don't want that to be answered till chapter 7. Whatever that is. That's for you to decide. So that's one way to make things more engaging, and it will keep people turning the pages because they want to know the answers to those questions. Another really important way, this is a 2 for today, 2 for 1. A great way to engage people is emotionally. And this is a misconception people have. They think like if their character shows emotion, the reader will show emotion. And this is not necessarily true. So you might show your character crying, but if the reader has not connected with that character, they may not care that much. And is emotion important? I believe it is very, very important. It's very important because the reader wants to feel. And even more so than the questions, maybe equally with them. That keeps people reading. It keeps people engaged. If you are making them feel something, they will be involved. Same thing with movies. Like if a movie is, if it engages the viewer, if it engages their audience emotionally, then it's going to be a more satisfying movie. Now, one phenomenon that has come out of that, I believe, I'm going to put my judgment on it right out there, is horror. I am not a horror fan. Some people are. Bless you, great. I'm not. I feel too manipulated over that. And plus, it, can bring up a lot of negative feelings that I just don't want. And again, I don't have judgment around it. If that's what you like, great, awesome, wonderful. Horror is supposedly bigger today than it has ever been. And the reason I believe it is because it makes people feel. It makes people feel, and people want to feel. Even if it's a negative emotion, even if it's something that might cause them disgust or revulsion or whatever it is, people want to feel. They really, really want to feel. So this applies to books and it applies to movies. And the emotion has to be authentic, and it has to be, again, with the character that the reader can relate to. Now, there's a big misconception among writers. I believe it's a misconception. Some people could say I'm wrong. I know there's writers that agree with me, but a lot of people think that the main character has to be likable. The main character has to be identifiable. The main character has to be relatable. But the main character does not necessarily have to be likable. And especially if they do a positive arc where they go from one point, they do this whatever thing they're doing that is not very favorable in the eyes of society or the eyes of the reader, but they're making progress. They're getting better at what they're doing. So if the reader can relate to them and they go through some emotion, something upsets them, then that keeps the reader reading. That keeps the reader reading. And there's a lot of examples of literature that is, whether it's, popular literature or more literary books or whatever that is, where people are emotionally engaged. You don't have to do that. Not every book engages people emotionally at all. But many do, and I would say virtually all of the really successful books and movies, they engage people emotionally. I can't get into all the different ways and hows of, engaging people emotionally, but I believe that if you consider that when you're writing, if you consider with, how to engage people emotionally, then, answers will come. Answers will come. And this is true for every type of writing. How-to fiction, yes, it's important to engage people emotionally if you want to write a really engaging book. Some people will read a how-to nonfiction book because they want to get the skill. They want to get the know-how. They want to figure out how to do something, how to do it better, whatever it is. And they will read it with no emotional engagement. But if you can put some of that in there, you put some of your story, your experience around it, and you can add some, emotional twist, which again, I believe it should be authentic. It should be something that really happened, that you really experienced. It will engage people. Same with your memoir. I was coaching a writer, really awesome writer today. And she had a very emotional experience in her book, but she didn't say how she felt about it. It was something that she experienced firsthand, and I just pointed it out to her, and I knew how she felt about it. Right? I could tell through the writing, and she said, "Oh yeah, that was that." It rang a bell for her, and I said, "Yeah, just say how you felt about this," and. I'm looking forward to seeing her next draft, but people want to feel. They want to feel, and they're not generally going to feel nearly as much unless they know how you feel. So we let them know how your characters feel. I did, as you know, well, I hope you know, if you've seen that video of mine, I talk about writing in layers, where you go over the whole book rather than trying to get it all perfect. You just kind of do the first layer. Well, you start with your first draft, and then you do second draft. And the second draft doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better. And you do it layer by layer by layer. And I believe it's a more fun way to write a book. That's the very short version of my previous video. So what I do a lot of times is I'll go over in one of the final layers of the book, just like I'm finishing my second book, The Reluctant Visionary, and you know, one of the final things I'm going through is the emotional feel. I want to know what the characters are feeling. If I'm not feeling what they're feeling, I need to look at that and see, do I need to adjust this? Do I need to add a paragraph here or a sentence? You know, some action, something that happens. You know, I wanna feel it as I'm reading it, and that's so I'll read my book through hundreds of times, literally. Yeah, it takes a little bit of obsession, I think, probably to do that, but that's what I do because I want it to be my best possible work. And when I am doing that after I've read it through, you know, a couple hundred times, I want to still feel, and if I don't, I want to see if something's wrong with that book that can be made better, that will engage people and make them feel. So I hope that was useful for you. Please don't forget to click subscribe, ring that little bell, and then you'll get notified of my videos when they come out. This is Dada Groover. This has been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I do, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.